In July 2025, something important happened in southern Tanzania. There were no breaking news alerts, no emergency summits in Washington or Brussels, no dramatic speeches broadcast around the world. President Samia Suluhu Hassan stood at a newly operational uranium processing facility and launched a project that barely registered in Western media. Russia built it, Russia financed it, and Russia will control it for the next 20 years. That single moment marked a turning point, not just for Tanzania, but for the balance of influence in East Africa. Because this wasn't just about uranium. It wasn't just about energy. It was about direction. Tanzania quietly chose a long-term partner for one of its most strategic resources. And that choice put Russia at the center of its future, while the West was still debating aid packages, election statements, and democratic benchmarks. This is why the West is worried. Why Tanzania matters more than people realize. Tanzania isn't a failed state. It isn't under sanctions. It hasn't experienced a military coup. Tanzania is stable, democratic by African standards, and strategically positioned in ways that make it far more important than headlines suggest. With a population of over 67 million people, Tanzania is Africa's fifth most populous country. But population alone doesn't explain its importance. Geography does. Tanzania sits on the Indian Ocean, home to the port of Dar es Salaam, one of Africa's most critical maritime hubs. Over 90% of Tanzania's international trade moves through this port. But more importantly, Dar es Salaam doesn't just serve Tanzania. It serves 8 landlocked countries: Zambia, Malawi, Rwanda, Uganda, the Democratic Republic of Congo, Ethiopia, South Sudan, Burundi. For these nations, access to global markets depends on Tanzanian infrastructure. When cargo flows into East and Central Africa, it flows through Tanzania. Control influence in Tanzania, and you touch trade routes affecting hundreds of millions of people. Russia understood that. Russia didn't arrive with soldiers. IT arrived with infrastructure. In the Sahel, Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, Russia's presence has been loud. Military agreements, security contractors, public confrontations with the West. Tanzania is different. Here, Russia arrived quietly. No mercenaries, no headlines about coups, no Africa Corps units. Instead, Russia came with energy infrastructure, technical cooperation, scholarships, and long-term economic agreements. The centerpiece of this strategy is the Mkuju River Uranium Project, operated by Rosatom, Russia's state nuclear corporation. Rosatom's subsidiary, Uranium One, acquired the project in 2020. Construction accelerated in 2024. By July 2025, the processing plant was operational. Total value, $1.2 billion. Planned output, 3,000 tons of uranium concentrate annually. Contract duration, 20 years. This makes it one of the largest uranium operations in Africa, and it is entirely Russian-controlled. Why uranium is a geopolitical weapon. Uranium isn't just another export commodity. You don't sell uranium like coffee or copper. Uranium sits at the heart of nuclear energy, and nuclear energy defines who controls baseload power in a future where fossil fuels are politically constrained and renewables remain intermittent. Africa's population is projected to double by 2050. Energy demand will explode. Countries that control uranium supply chains will control who gets reliable power and who doesn't. Tanzania holds the world's 8th largest uranium reserves, estimated at over 152 million tons of ore. For decades, these reserves sat mostly untouched. Western companies conducted studies, raised environmental concerns, cited regulatory uncertainty, and ultimately hesitated. Russia did not. Russia offered full financing, technology transfer, local employment, fast timelines, no political conditions. And Tanzania said yes. That decision locked Tanzania into the global nuclear fuel cycle, with Russia as the gatekeeper. This goes far beyond one plant. The uranium project is only one piece of a much larger puzzle. In October 2024, Tanzania and Russia held their first joint intergovernmental commission on trade and economic cooperation in Dar es Salaam. Agreements covered fertilizer production, natural gas development, direct flights between Moscow and Zanzibar, expanded military technical cooperation. That military component is critical. Since signing a defense cooperation agreement in 2016, over 200 Tanzanian military personnel have trained at Russian defense institutions. Every year, Russia offers scholarships to Tanzanian students, military officers, engineers, and nuclear specialists. In 2025, that number increased significantly. This isn't about weapons sales. It's about human capital. Russia is shaping a generation of Tanzanian decision-makers who speak Russian, trained in Moscow, maintain professional networks inside Russian institutions. That influence doesn't appear in arms trade statistics, but it lasts decades. The West's approach, a different kind of engagement. The United States remains Tanzania's largest bilateral aid donor. In fiscal year 2024 alone, the U.S. planned over $560 million in assistance, primarily through HIV treatment programs, malaria prevention, maternal and child health. These programs save lives, but they do not build strategic leverage. They don't create dependency in critical sectors like energy or defense. And as Western aid increasingly comes with conditions, governance reforms, election standards, human rights benchmarks, the relationship becomes fragile. In December 2025, the U.S. State Department announced a comprehensive review of relations with Tanzania, citing free speech concerns, religious freedom, election-related violence, barriers to U.S. investment. The European Union froze €156 million in aid over democratic backsliding. The message was clear: comply or lose support. Tanzania's response was equally clear.
Tanzania didn't back down. IT diversified. Tanzania didn't apologize. It didn't sever ties with the West either. Instead, it deepened cooperation with Russia. Foreign minister visits continued to Washington, but Russian delegations were simultaneously arriving in Dar es Salaam. New agreements were signed. Existing partnerships expanded. Tanzania learned a lesson many African countries are learning: you don't need to choose sides anymore. This is not anti-Western policy. It's a post-Western strategy. A world where U.S. and European influence is no longer exclusive, just one option among many. Why Tanzania can do what others can't. Unlike Mali or Niger, Tanzania has no recent coup, remains democratic, is diplomatically connected, faces no major sanctions. That gives it room to maneuver. Tanzania can work with Russia without triggering sweeping Western retaliation. It can engage China on infrastructure, the U.S. on health, and Russia on energy and defense simultaneously. This strategic ambiguity is powerful, but it has limits. Every uranium processing unit built by Rosatom, every Tanzanian engineer trained in Moscow, and every maintenance contract signed creates structural dependency. Energy infrastructure is not easily replaced. Technical expertise doesn't transfer overnight. Once embedded, influence becomes durable. Russia's broader African strategy. Tanzania is not an isolated case. Across Africa, Russia is building a coordinated energy network. Egypt, $25 billion nuclear plant financed by Russia. Namibia, $450 million uranium partnership. Burkina Faso, nuclear cooperation agreements. Mali and Niger, energy and security discussions. Ethiopia, nuclear development plans approved by international bodies. Rosatom isn't just selling projects, it's building an ecosystem. Meanwhile, Western nuclear ambition stalled after Fukushima. Financing dried up. Public opposition grew. Russia did the opposite. It subsidized exports, offered long-term loans, framed nuclear energy as the solution to energy poverty. And African governments noticed.
Why the West is really worried. This isn't about Tanzania becoming a Russian client state. It's about leverage erosion. Western influence used to flow from conditionality. Do this or lose access. That leverage is weakening because alternatives now exist. Russia doesn't lecture. It doesn't impose governance conditions. It delivers projects. Quietly, patiently, structurally. And Tanzania's uranium partnership proves that influence in the 21st century doesn't arrive through invasions, but through infrastructure. Conclusion: a future already set in motion. By 2029, Tanzania will export 3,000 tons of uranium concentrate annually. Its energy sector will rely on Russian technology. Its engineers will train in Moscow. Its trade networks will integrate with Russian supply chains. None of this required a dramatic announcement, just a project launch, a commission meeting, a contract was signed, and by the time the world notices, the trajectory is already set. That is why Tanzania's Russia partnership has the West worried, because influence didn't shift loudly. It shifted quietly, and it's going to last decades.